You are listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with Steve Worsley, the toxic mold expert and your number one source for mold consulting and mitigation in the USA. Let's dive into a brand new episode. Before we get started on this episode, here's a not so short disclaimer. While all attempts have been made to verify the content provided in this podcast, neither the podcaster or the producers assume any responsibility for errors, omissions, or alternative interpretations of the issues discussed here. All information stated in this podcast is the opinion of Steve Worsley. Steve Worsley is a mold specialist with over 25 years of experience in the construction and mold industry. The Toxic Mold Podcast is for information sharing purposes only. The views expressed are those of the podcaster and his alone. These views should not be taken as expert instruction or commands. While there may be references to medical conditions and symptoms, all podcast episodes are the opinion of Steve Worsley, and any medical questions or concerns shall be addressed with the appropriate licensed medical professional or professionals. As the podcaster refers to different mold types, please be aware that Steve Worsley is not a microbiologist, and questions concerning mold specifics should be answered by the appropriate professional. Steve isn't, nor does he offer any legal advice. For any legal advice, you must speak with a lawyer. The listener is 100% responsible for his or her own actions. You can check out Steve's books on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and search for author Steve Worsley. You can also take Steve's courses on Udemy or Skillshare, and you can find out more about those at cnccontractorservices.com. Now, let's get to the episode.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Toxic Mold Podcast. Today is episode 194, and tomorrow is Valentine's Day. So, did you buy me that Corvette yet?
No.
By the way, this is Cassandra Von Worsley. This is my wife. Those of you that have been listening for a long time, she was doing these with me to kind of get me on the right track, because this is all new to me, this digital stuff. And she runs her own business. She does a lot of coaching and all sorts of fun stuff, mostly with female entrepreneurs. But she's busy, so she's kind of handed the reins over to me. And I bugged her, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, you invited me back.
I'm like, babe, well, you were never not invited. Like, babe, can you kind of help me? I think they're getting tired of listening to just me.
100%.
And a lot of it's because I think you bring in, not just because you're so highly educated, but you bring in an aspect of it that, for one, I don't think of, but then you ask questions that I don't think of, and you tell me that all the time.
Correct.
Like, people don't know what you know, Steve.
No, as a layperson, there's a lot I don't know about mold. Even though I'm married to a mold expert, there's a ton I don't know. And so I look at it through the lens of somebody who lives in a home, but not somebody who has expertise in mold prevention in a home. Right.
I think they like to hear you, and they just probably get tired of me. But you do ask questions that I don't think of, so we appreciate having you. For those of you that listened last week, she's agreed to do 4 episodes. I think we were going to call it a series. I think
it is a series.
The do's and don'ts of mold, and so yeah, it's the month of love. So how fitting to have my wife here. So episode 194. What we're going to talk about today is probably one of the touchiest subjects. When I say touchy, it's probably one of the most repeated misnomers out there, wives' tales, whatever you want to call it. And it is, what chemicals should you use for mold? So you, as somebody that doesn't have to deal with all the questions I get and whatnot, what do you, when you hear chemicals and mold, what comes to your mind?
Well, bleach is the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
But really, the whole topic of this episode, the first thing that comes to my mind is how, and it really depends on how you grew up, but I grew up with a Haitian mother who, you know, she didn't like medicine, so she had all kinds of, natural, quote unquote, remedies to fix everything. And if you've seen my big fat Greek wedding, the guy, he squints Windex on everything. Like, you have a cut, he puts Windex on it. You have this, but for some reason, he thought that Windex cured all. And that's how I look at this topic. Lots of people are like, everything fixes mold, baking soda, baking powder, all kinds
hydrogen
of
peroxide.
Everything. And so there's just moments where you have to ask a different question, which is, what is really the problem and what is really the cure.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you bring that up because my listeners that do this, is it essential oils or something?
Oh,
oils?
Yes, like doTERRA and the likes, yes.
I always hear tea tree oil, and I'm not saying it doesn't work, but on the level of what we do for mitigation, like they come in little bottles, so we'd probably go broke, or actually our clients would if we were using that. But tea tree oils, I get told a lot. There's, I think, thieves oil. There's several oils that people say, yeah, you can use this on it. And I don't say that they're wrong by any means, but as professionals, we don't do that. But it was interesting because what you said, what you thought of, and this is the question I hear all the time, is bleach. Well, can't I just spray bleach on mold? It all depends. And when I say it depends on the surface that you're spraying that on. You know, if you're spraying, you know, I'm looking at my desk that has a finish on it. If I'm spraying bleach on mold that's on my desk, is that okay? Well, probably. It's not going to hurt anything because it's not a porous surface. Now, if I spray it on that sheetrock over there or insulation, that's not a good idea. And it's the reason behind that is 95% of bleach is water. And most chemicals you're going to buy at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever hardware store you're going to go to, if you read the back, and a lot of them have gotten really sneaky, but if you read the back of the ingredient or where the ingredients are, it says 95% other, which that other is water. That's just easier to not say it's water. And then 5%, which some of them it's not even that, is whatever chemical, and it can be all sorts of different chemicals. I think Clorox is like hypochlorite or something. I'm not sure. So for our listeners, I apologize. But anyhow, my whole point is 95% of that's water. So when you spray that on mold, and let's say it's insulation, the 5% of whatever chemical it is evaporates quickly, and then the rest is water. So you're literally watering it. Like if you want your grass to die, what's the easiest way to kill it?
You stop watering it.
Exactly. And so it's the same concept with mold. So when you think you're getting rid of the mold, you're literally feeding the mold. So it's kind of an interesting question that I get all the time. And a lot of times I hear, well, it's in the EPA has a guide and it's in there. And last I checked, the EPA does tell you that's what you should do.
Well, but I think what's interesting is it's not only that when you're trying to DIY a mold issue, which you probably shouldn't do because you don't have the expertise to do it, you're not only feeding the mold with anything that is water-based, you're also exposing yourself directly to harm.
Yeah, the chemicals.
Because it's one thing for somebody who is a mold mitigation expert to say, you need to leave the house for a couple weeks. We're going to use all of these chemicals to clear everything out. Then we're going to, clear out the air quality in the house. We're going to get it to a livable level. Then you move back into the house. The second you are the person on the floor or on the wall exposing yourself to all the toxins in bleach, you are inhaling that. You are taking that in. We have a big enough problem in the world with all of the chemicals in our house, VOCs, that are literally causing allergies and headaches and hormone disruption. Just add another one with bleach. Why would you do that when you can have an expert actually come handle it? You're not in the home being exposed to it, and you're not exposing yourself to unnecessary chemicals.
Exactly. Yeah, and you bring up something, with with COVID and everything, we did episodes about it. It's kind of crazy to think, probably a couple of years ago. And one of the things I brought up, and you and I talk about it often, I believe as a society, you brought up the what was the movie, Four Greeks?
Oh, My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh, sorry. Never seen it, obviously. He sprays Windex on everything. Well, it kind of reminded me of the whole, everybody, hand sanitizers, Clorox wipes, and just disinfectants that I believe as a society, we are teaching our bodies to not build up an immunity to a lot of things. And that's why I think COVID, which, sorry to get off on that tangent, but to me it was a kind of a good comparison. When we have things like that come into the population, our bodies can't fight it off if we just keep, if you are just, what's the term they use for germaphobe?
Oh, yeah.
if you're a germaphobe and you're just constantly making sure everything's disinfected, your body doesn't have an immunity to anything.
Nope.
Like we kid around. I don't remember what we were just talking about the other day, but we were kidding around how as kids we ate dirt.
Correct.
Literally. I mean,
And yet our children are probably more immunocompromised than we are because they've been kept in the bubbles of all of this stuff and at the same time exposed to all of the volatile organic compounds, the VOCs, the air fresheners, we have so many VOCs going on that are, even doTERRA, the smelly good stuff that I love those essential oils too, but the fragrances are toxic to us.
Yep. Yeah, and speaking of VOCs, so VOCs for our listeners is volatile organic compounds, and VOCs literally could be Windex, Clorox wipes, like you said, could be candles, air fresheners, oils, perfumes. I mean, paints, stains, adhesives. Like we could go on and on and on. And our ancestors weren't exposed to that. And it's no different than when we talk about, like, why did I write the very first book that you talked me into writing? Why did I write The Mold Epidemic?
Because it's an epidemic.
And we live in homes that are sealed up for the most part. We don't open windows and get ventilation. We have HVAC systems that have air conditioning and heat just automatically. Like it's not even really a touch of the button. And that's what we're exposing ourselves to is whatever's in this home, this air keeps recirculating itself, and that's what you're exposed to. And like you said, VOCs cause headaches, all sorts of stuff.
And it's just the compounding. I've been watching a lot of movies lately where they keep showing clothing lines with those wooden clothing pins. That's how my mother would dry our clothes growing up. Where are our clothes now? They're in an insulated dryer. We stick little fabric sheets that have VOCs in them.
Yeah.
So the clothes smell good. Like, if you just think about the compounded nature of all the VOCs that are in everything. Candles are great. Essential oils are great. But when you compound all of the different ways, every single day you're getting in those VOCs, you're already exposing your body typically every day to a lot, let alone trying to clean up the mold yourself with bleach.
Yeah, and it's at the end of the day, we as a society or as humans, we've done it out of convenience.
Yep. Yeah, it's not convenient to dry your clothes on a clothing line with wooden pins.
And going back to, our ancestors, however far back you want to go, they weren't in sealed up homes. Like there's the reason why doors, and I've pointed it out to you, if you look over at that door, the reason there's a gap underneath that is for airflow. You can also see up above it is a vent.
Yep. And
it's for airflow because we live in such a sealed up environment inside our homes. And, with COVID, we pretty much locked ourselves down. I know a lot of people didn't just lock themselves inside of a home, but we were exposing ourselves to a lot more things inside our homes than we were used to. Which brings us back full circle. Like using all of those chemicals all the time, I believe had a larger effect on us as humans because we clean everything all the time. And not us per se, we're not germaphobes, but a lot of people, they want air purifiers and hand sanitizers and all this stuff. And mold is very similar to obviously those types of things like COVID. They just mutate.
Correct.
The flu,
they respond to the.
They're trying to survive.
Correct.
And so they're morphing, and when you hear like super virus or whatever, mold is no different. It's trying to survive as much as we are. And so coming back to like chemicals, like one question I get asked all the time. So Steve, are you saying you guys don't use chemicals as mold mitigation professionals? Absolutely, we do, but when we're using those chemicals, we're not just spraying something on the mold to kill it. Because you can't kill mold.
And you're in monkey suits, and you've got a mask on. You're protecting yourself from the chemicals that you're using.
Yeah, and the best way to say it to our listeners, it's one part of the process that we're doing. We're we don't just spray, and that's the only step in mitigation. We usually it's either before or after we have removed the mold spores. So the spray is kind of a secondary, it's like the doctor's giving you an antibiotic after a surgery. It's just to make sure you don't develop some sort of infection. It's not necessarily to fight off a specific infection. It's the same concept with us. So when our listeners hear, yes, we do use chemicals. We are using chemicals, but it's different chemicals for different reasons at certain points of the mitigation process. It is not just we go in and we spray and we're calling it good.
Correct.
We've talked about it before, but there's companies out there, and I'm not going to name their names, but they convince homeowners that you can come in, or they can come in and they can spray for $2,500. They can spray and fog the whole home, and you don't need mold mitigation. That's mold mitigation. So that's way cheaper than the $10,000 that a company like we're going to charge. And we've talked about it, and we know that's not, what's that doing?
Yeah, nothing. So it's not dealing with the core. It's not dealing with the core issue. In the same way that when people feel like, again, going to a panic mode about what they suspect is mold, and they say, well, let me go to Home Depot and let me get this, whatever the mold remover of the day is, and let me go home and let me scrub. There's lots of questions that they're not asking before they jump to try to fix something that maybe they don't understand the full scope of what's going on. You see mold on a bathroom wall. Well, is the mold underneath your floors? You don't know.
Right. Yeah, the first thing we do is we figure out what defect led to that mold. And, so like you said, people, they're going to run to the hardware store and they get a concrobium is what those mostly are. And if you really look or read the fine print on those, they're literally like a disinfectant. They're not, nothing just gets rid of mold. The mold spores, like I said, it's like your grass. Unless you totally remove that grass to put gravel down or whatever, it doesn't go anywhere. It's still there. Molds the same way. But a lot of people want to take the easier, cheaper route, run down to the hardware store, get that sprayed, spray it on their wall. Mm-hmm. Like I said earlier, you're literally, depending on the surface you're spraying it on, you're feeding the mold. Now, if you're putting it on a non-porous surface, so tile, which is somewhat porous, but nothing compared to what we're talking about when we talk about sheetrock or 2x4s or insulation, that the density of that's not even close to something like tile. You can clean that. That's a surface mold. But once again, that surface mold is there that you can see, like what's going on behind the wall. If you see that slimy stuff, which is typically going to be mildew, you probably have, if there's a defect for that to be able to grow, there's probably a ton of mold behind the walls, and you can't just spray that.
Exactly.
And when you try to do that, you're literally going to spread the mold spores throughout your entire home.
Correct.
So it's, to answer the question of what our topic was, do we use chemicals for mold mitigation? Absolutely. Should our listeners do it? No, unless you really know what you're doing. So it's... And
YouTubing a bunch of videos, as much as I love YouTube, is not knowing exactly what
that's what
doing.
We're going to start doing, though. But,
But
my YouTube's not going to be a...
Correct. We're going to be building a YouTube channel, but the YouTube channel's goal is to educate and increase awareness so that those who watch your YouTube videos will get a much better understanding of what they're dealing with, so they develop a pathway to actually fixing the real issues.
Yeah. And what's funny is in my podcast notes, the call to action says if you hear someone tell you to spray mold, educate them.
Yes.
And that's, I hear it all the time. Why don't you spray bleach on mold? No, don't. Like if you really think about what you're doing, you're literally watering, like your grass, you're literally watering that grass. And it's the same thing with mold. So just don't do it. Make sure you know what you're doing. So we have courses that we have up on Udemy. For those of you that used to go to Skillshare's changed their algorithms. You have tons of courses on there. I only had a couple, and I pretty much didn't meet their requirements. So the only platform we do have courses on is Udemy, but I do have a free one which is toxic mold making me sick? And you helped me get that all up and going. I couldn't have done that on my own. But anyhow, they can go to Udemy, and I'm assuming they have to open an account, correct?
Yes, and they can purchase take the course for free, but they need to have an account.
Right. And then I do have a few others. Do it yourself home inspection, do it yourself mold inspection, and I believe building a mold resistant home. I have a big home inspection one I'm working on, which is my next book. But yeah, they can go to Udemy, and those courses you pay for, but Is Toxic Mold Making Me Sick completely free. It's been a couple of years, hasn't it?
Yeah. So go take the course. It's free.
Yeah, it's free. It'll really help you as far as if you think mold's making you sick, go there and take it. So once again, tomorrow is Valentine's Day, and this was episode 194. And the question was, what chemicals can you use for mold? So hopefully we answered all their questions. And thank you for being on this episode. We get, 2 more?
2 more.
Perfect. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you go to our website at cnccontractorservices.com and sign up for the mold investigation checklist. Again, go to cnccontractorservices.com and get your free mold investigation checklist today. You can also on cnccontractorservices.com find out more about Steve's courses and books and consultations. Once again, go to cnccontractorservices.com.